Hi, I'm Morgan Smith, and I'm at Woodstock Film Festival at Utopia Studios. We're about to see the panel, Which Films Make It and Which Films Don't.
This panel is about what makes or breaks a film. Why are some films successful and others are not? We have assembled some of the most talented, successful industry and filmmakers in the business who will delve into that issue and explore it and try to figure it out together with you guys.
We're talking just briefly about Driving Miss Daisy, and I'd like you to kick in on that.
Well, that was a really a freak situation because that film was made on a pretty low budget. I think it was just over $7 million, which wasn't much even like 17 years ago. It was very small even then. But when we finished the film, and we showed it to Warner's, I remember we put on a screening and only one person turned up. So then I heard they were going to release it in an art house in San Francisco and one in LA. And I said, that's it? And they said, well, it's just an art house movie. There's just an old Jewish lady and an old black man talking in a kitchen. And I said, well, I suppose that's true. And then, so there was no plans for it. Then they had their big Christmas release, I remember, was a film called In Country with Bruce Willis. But that film tanked. Yeah. So I suddenly got a call from Warner's and they said, have you still got, they couldn't even remember the name of the film. They said, have you still got that film? The one with the old Jewish lady and the old black man talking in the kitchen. And I said, yeah, well, of course I've still got it. And they said, can you bring it over here? So in those days you had to get these trunks, you know, it was in big tin thing, we put it in the back of the car. I drove over to the Warner lot and then I had to meet a guy from marketing. And we went into this big theatre, really big theatre, but there was only one guy. And I thought, oh, I don't know what's going on. So we walked in. He was very friendly. I can't remember his name. He was very friendly. We walked in and sat down in the middle of the theatre, and it all started up. And in a quarter of an hour, the film had really only 15 minutes in, he suddenly got up and just walked out. And I followed him out. And we stood in the lobby, and he stood there a second. He said, I said, no good, eh? And he said, no, it is good. He said, it's good. He said, is the rest of it as good as the first 15 minutes? And I said, oh, it gets better and better. And then he said, I think we can do something with this. And the next thing I knew,
after 15
from
minutes.
2 art houses, it was in cinemas all over America and then all over the world.
Right.
So then I became rather cynical about what was and what wasn't a commercial film. Right. Because they had regarded that film as really a non-starter.
Right. No, they didn't have.
And then they won the Academy Award with it.
Right. William Goldman, years ago, the great screenwriter, he said, and other people have paraphrased it, it's nobody knows nothing. And nobody knows nothing. You can think that you're behind like the single greatest film ever made, and it does absolutely nothing and no one sees it. Now, Michael at his company, a number of years ago, worked on a film which was, it's hard to describe. You can't sit there and spell it out in one sentence as a high concept and just immediately you get it. And tell the story of that film in release because it's fascinating.
What the Bleep Do We Know was a film that came to us and every single distribution company turned it down. We turned it down. And they paid us to release the movie. You know,
who did?
The producers, Will Arntz and Betsy Chassie. They are the directors and producers of the film. It was a new age film, and you know, it was about your perceptions, and it was about how your mind works, and it was, you know, quantum physics. And I couldn't get through earth science in high school, so it was way over my head. And we said, I don't know who this film is for, but it played to an audience, and we just caught on with people, and it became a craze, and every company had looked at the movie and said there's no business in it. That movie went on to do $11 million in box office.
And you can have films that will underperform or be barely visible or never released theatrically that will get in front of individuals in a very aggressive way on demand.
I think with VOD about to take over and sort of erase DVDs, which I think is going to happen sooner than we may think, there's an unsettling period of transition where people are where the economics of the old way of doing things haven't quite been worked into the new way of doing things. So it means that independent filmmakers aren't able to find that much money for their projects because people aren't sure how they're going to sell their projects. I think in the next few years, as the dust settles, I think VOD is going to lead to a potential explosion of independent production that similar to the one that happened when VHS came out and then DVDs came out.
One of the things about the way that people are consuming this information, or in this case these films, is it's so easy for them to get them that if your film is good and it's going to get good word of mouth, it's really easy for me to just search for it on Netflix and stream it. I don't have to do any work. So if someone tells you something's good, back in the day, you would have had to drive down to Blockbuster and rent the DVD, or in this case, a VHS tape, or whatever. It is, frankly, there was more work involved, and people don't like to do work. So getting them stuff very simply is ultimately getting more eyes on your films.
I mean, social media now is the catchphrase for all, in terms of trying to get the awareness out. I mean, the important thing about going to see a movie is bringing awareness, to your who your audience is. And when you talk about publicity, publicity is the ultimate for independent companies because we don't have the advertising dollars, so that you want to get the publicity hits where you can. The unfortunate part of it is the newspapers are shrinking. They're interested in other things, but the smaller and smaller the papers, less writers. Publicity is very hard to get. You run into a lot of dead ends with both the press and with your stars because there's a lot of publicity they don't want to do.
There is a bit of a disconnect on the web. Now, it's taken a few years for the marketing engines of the studios as well as the independent companies to learn how to use the internet. Not yet. It's there. It exists. We all know how to use it, and still, it doesn't give you a guarantee. It doesn't make everybody sure that everything is going to be successful every single week and every single opening.
Thanks for watching, and for more information, check www.woodstockfilmfestival.com.